staff responsible for running the Titanic: Herbert McElroy, Charles Lightoller, Herbert Pittman, Joseph Boxhall, Harold Lowe, William Murdoch, Henry Wilde, James Moody, and of course, who could forget Captain Edward Smith, the captain of the Titanic. Edward John Smith was also known as the billionaire's captain, as he was a favourite of many rich people back then. In fact, some people even delayed their cruise just so they could sail with him. Edward was scheduled to retire after the ship's maiden voyage, but unfortunately he went down with the ship. Now time to talk about how the Titanic is connected to Ireland. Harland and Wolff started building the Titanic on March 31st, 1909 in Belfast, and was completed exactly 3 years later on March 31st, 1912. The Titanic first set out on its maiden voyage on the 10th of April 1912, only 1 month after it was built. She then sailed to Southampton in England for her maiden voyage. She stopped in Cherbourg in France and Cove, known as Queenstown at the time, in Ireland, to pick up passengers, crew and supplies. But getting the Titanic into Cove's port would just take too long, so they used 2 tenders to transport people in Cove from land to boat. It was very packed on the tenders, but it got the job done. Alright, now time to talk about the classes on the Titanic. There were 3 main classes on the Titanic: first class, second class, and third class. Alright, let's start with first class and work our way down to third. When booking your first class ticket, you can expect veranda cafes, a smoking room, a restaurant, a dining saloon, and a reading and writing room. All of this would cost £30 or £3,300 in today's money. 324 passengers on the Titanic chose to travel this way. Alright, now on to second class. Surprisingly, second class had 39 less passengers than first class, coming in at 285 passengers. Passengers in second class had access to facilities such as a spacious outdoor promenade, a smoking room, a library, and a dining room. To pass the time, second-class passengers played deck games such as shuffleboard and quoits. So, how much did all this cost? £13, or £1,500 in today's money. Now, let's not call the third class poor. A third-class ticket would cost £7, or £800 in today's money. That is still a lot of money. In fact, some people didn't even make £7 in a year. The Titanic's third class was thought to be the best third class in the whole entire world, with running water and working lights. Nothing like this had ever been seen before. Of course, there were downsides to being a third class passenger. You had to stay in small 4-person bedrooms. You ate in dining facilities with other third-class passengers, and you all shared a couple of bathrooms, with only 1 bath being in use. 709 passengers went the third-class way. Now on to the sinking of the Titanic. The Titanic sunk on the 15th of April 1912 in the North Atlantic Ocean. At about 11:40 a.m., Frederick Fleet spotted an iceberg the shape of 2 tables put together. It may have looked small on the surface, but underneath it was absolutely massive. By the time Frederick spotted the iceberg, it was too late to avoid collision. First Officer William Murdoch swung the wheel of the Titanic with all his might seconds after hearing the news. The passengers inside only felt a slight rumble. At 12:05 a.m., Captain Smith ordered the lifeboats to be prepared for evacuation. The next 2 hours were complete chaos, with people scrambling to get a spot on the lifeboats first. Lifeboat number 1 had only 12 occupants, including Sir Cosmo and Lady Duff Gordon. Some people believed they had used their wealth to secure their own lifeboat and crew. As the lifeboats were lowered, there was a flurry of activity on deck. The radio operators sent out distress signals tirelessly. They sent out Morse code message after Morse code message in hopes that a ship nearby would read them. As the last lifeboats were lowered, several people tried to get into them by sliding down the ropes or leaping from the lower decks. Others jumped into the sea, hoping to climb aboard a lifeboat later. A few lucky people managed to hide in a lifeboat on deck and were only detected once afloat. They couldn't throw them out then. In the lower bowels of the Titanic, engineers worked tirelessly to keep the electricity going in hopes that another ship would spot the Titanic as it was slowly sinking. In a final attempt of survival, people on the Titanic tried to make their own lifeboats with deck chairs and other furniture items. The lucky survivors on the lifeboats looked on in terror as the Titanic slipped into the ocean. Eyewitness Colonel Archibald Gracie was dragged underwater by suction from the sinking ship. Then suddenly he was blown clear by a gust of air from a ventilation shaft. He managed to climb onto collapsible lifeboat B. Miraculously, while all of this was happening, the Titanic's 2 bands kept on playing. They played and played until their instruments filled with water. The Saving. At 12:25 a.m., RMS Carpathia picked up a distress message from the Titanic. The ship immediately turned around and started heading for the sinking of the Titanic. Fortunately, everyone in the lifeboats was saved. But the traumatic experiences the passengers had left a permanent scar in their memories. Loved ones were lost, and people had to say goodbye to their dearest friends. Of course, the press were all over them, asking questions and trying to find out what happened. Fortunately, New York City Mayor William Gaynor urged the presses not to bother the unfortunate people. He wrote letters to people who could help and organized a Red Cross committee to distribute aid to those in need. American oceanographer Robert D. Ballard found the Titanic's shipwreck in 1985 using Ergo, a deep-sea underwater robot craft he had developed. The following year, he went back to study the wreck in detail. Over the years, bits and pieces of the Titanic have been retrieved from the ocean, and quite a collection has been formed. To this day, many people still wonder questions about the Titanic, and the answers to those we may never find out. But we'll keep living and learning, and that was my project on the Titanic. Thank you for listening and watching my video. I'd just like to thank this book, my mom and dad for bringing me to a Titanic museum, and my bed. It was there when I needed it most.